Hello, Diane, can you hear us? Of course, I have my volume turned off. Make sure we got her. Diane, can you hear us? Okay. I've been trying to try to send the music, the sound to over the speakers up here. Does that work?
What's your input?
Just HDMI. That
It
work?
should work. Did you test it?
No. No. Well, I'm going to go back to my speakers here. I'll go back to mine to make sure. We can test it. And then
Should work.
nobody else is on except Diane. So it's just us right now.
Is she muted or is she?
She's muted. She may not be able to fully participate in that. Okay. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started and call this to order. Welcome everybody to our November 2021 CPAD board meeting. We don't have a terribly long agenda tonight. We'll be talking, well, we're going through the agenda to see what we'll be talking about. I'd like to call to order. Terry's here.
Jeff's here.
I'm here.
And Diane is on the phone. She's on travel. She may not be able to fully participate in her circumstance here, but she'll try to join us when she can. Could you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order is adoption of the minutes. And that should be there. I just realized there's a wrong date on there. That is for the agenda for tonight's meeting. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is the minutes from the meeting. I've got to get back to the agenda here. Let me go stop sharing this. This is up. And there's Diane. Diane, can you hear us? You're muted. Yeah, okay.
Yes, I can hear you fine. I'm in Paducah, Kentucky.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, can you see the agenda? Okay. So tonight's agenda, running through it, is of course what we followed by the adoption, review and adoption of the minutes from the last board meeting. We have a special presentation by CHP. Looking forward to that. We'll go through our committee reports as our standard practice, including finance, airport managers report, update on contracts, which is a standing item, and volunteer service report. Then move on to public forum. And go into old business, some of which I would get at the time I want to merge with new business because it's changing there. Discuss the preparation status of scheduling the public meetings and the district financial status, forecast and the proposed measures. It's not purpose, it's what did I propose? It's supposed to be propose TBD, and that's what we'll be talking about, looking at a schedule. Going to suggest we merge also the fuel system replacement public meeting at the financial meetings. They seem to be intertwined. We'll talk about various updates. Move on to news business, and the major part there is to talk about the finance the work the Infrastructure Finance Committee has recently done, and what kind of a suggested plan as we move into next year for the ballot, for the proposed ballot measure. Then lastly, proposal by Foothills Flight Center to change your hangar lease. What I'd really like to talk here, when we get to that part, is talk about the process and some bigger picture items, and then finally adjourn. Are there any comments to the agenda for tonight?
I move we adopt the agenda as written.
I second that. Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to the minutes. Bring those up. Let's see, share screen. Should be the minutes. Okay, running through this is for the October 25th board meeting. We adopted the agenda. The minutes from the September meeting were adopted. Financial reports, we had no real comments or questions on that. We'll be updating here for Dominic on the manager's report. This is as the status as of then. Are we missing anything? Any updates on the board? Talking the manager's report, talking about the dirt, spreading the dirt, procurement contracts, which again we'll be updating here shortly, and volunteer status, public comments. Update from Dave Becker on the obstruction mitigation on Salisbury. Are there any changes, updates? And finally, we talked about paying a taxi on Boyne, and we'll have an update on that tonight. We did approve, which was really in the purview of the airport manager, but brought it to light. I'm sorry, the first one was we talked about as a board, the rental payment for the tractor, which was it's greatly appreciated and was passed. Insurance claim for the fence, we decided to go forward with that. We changed an update to the CPAD policy on counting procedures to streamline the process so we don't have to write a check from our same bank and then turn around and deposit the same bank, to be able to do that online. And then talked about the replacing the fuel hoses and fire extinguishers, and we'll get an update on that. Oh, more. We talked about automobile and insurance. I think we still have that as to close out to further discuss. And then we also talked about a study team to get together and talk about the study on the liability of cars. And I think that we didn't put on the list. Maybe we can address going forward plan for that. Any comments?
The only comment I had was on the hanging awards. I don't think we received any invoices yet. We haven't even received bids on it yet.
For the
hanging awards in the spring.
we haven't received the bid on that.
No. So I think this one talks about we received an invoice for.
Oh, is this for the, I'm sorry, which one?
Go back a little bit more, so it talks about hanging awards.
Let's see.
That's on, yeah, on the second page. Item B.
Okay.
There it is. Talks about the invoice. I don't think we received anything.
We have not received.
Have not received it.
Okay.
I'll change that.
Any other comments? Got to make a motion that we adopt the minutes as with the changes as noted. Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. That all passes. Get to stop. And I go back to the agenda. So we do, this is a unusual thing between the minutes and the committee reports. So we have a special presentation by CHP. Put them in front of our agenda because we're anxious.
Yeah, well, I want to go ahead and start off by saying, hey, thank you all very much for tolerating our car show. We had a wonderful, successful car show this year. We figured we had at least 250 cars and probably 5,000 people. So, and it was, in the day and age of COVID, I think we did really well. It was within 2 or 3 weeks prior to the possibility of it not even happening. And I want to thank the community. I want to thank all of our volunteers, and everybody who came together this time really quickly and got this thing going. And we were very surprised to see that it was the most successful show we've had. So I can see nothing but bright future for this. We're hoping to continue this on. Hopefully we have a little bit more time to plan this next year. We're hearing barring any fires, pandemics.
Shut up.
Yeah. I was out working 12-hour mandatory shifts, actually one at 16, 2 weeks before the event. So we had about a week and a half to get it all together, and we were frantically running around trying to make sure the county was going to permit us, because the county had COVID issues and their office was closed, and we were running scared, and we finally got the supervisor who is in this district.
Oh, for here?
Yeah.
Lori Harlan.
She jumped on that.
Yeah, I made one phone call to Lori.
And she immediately had our permits taken care of. So it takes a village, and it will continue to take a village, but we appreciate everybody's help and your cooperation and your understanding of how we come and destroy your neighborhood about day. So thank you again. So next year, we're looking at a date of September 24th, which will be the last Saturday in September. Hopefully great weather, and again, no fires. So something we weren't planning on, and after we got through the COVID issues. So hopefully we don't have that again. But as we were speaking, we had a very, very successful show. So again, as our gift to you, or thank you for letting us use the facility. A third of the parking this year, total ended up being $2,100. Last year, $1,500. So we've gone up. And like I said, all I can see is a bright future, and we think this thing's going to continue to grow. All in all, we were able to give out a grand total of $20,900 to nonprofits in the area, including the Widows and Orphans Fund, which is our CHP fund. And that's going to be distributed before the first of the year. Yep. Through the foundation. But again,
We just finished finalizing all the money.
so I'd like to present the check, $2,100. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very
for
much,
all the
Brett.
help. You guys
Oh,
always help out.
thank you. It's a
so much.
pleasure.
Oh, sure. We do it across the table, or? There you go.
Here, grab
Yep,
that.
there you go.
Jeff, you can be in there.
Yeah,
Come on,
Yeah.
they got the shirts on.
yeah, that's right.
Shirt action.
You guys want to get in too?
Yeah. Come on, Glenn. Yeah,
Get in there.
I don't want to be alone here.
Jeff, get in there. All right.
And Diane, you're part of this in spirit here.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Julie, thanks for all your help.
Oh,
Getting
absolutely.
this thing together. You're gonna be,
That also was a last second.
And-
Yeah.
And we're hoping that we've jumped on it quick enough that we aren't going to interfere with the Reno Air Show this next year, so we'll have
Oh, right.
more participation.
Saturday.
Sure, yeah, we're gonna put ours on the calendar and go check it, because I don't know that they have their schedule already. But we're gonna make sure we don't do that in conflict with either the Reno Air Show or the SAC Air Show.
Still had, and it was a last minute.
It was great.
Which was
Yeah.
awesome. So-
Yeah, yeah. They came through, they called me the morning of, woke me up about 6 o'clock and said, hey, we're gonna do a flyover.
Yeah. no, I mean, and then our own neighbors
Oh.
here, they
Oh, yeah.
decided like we're gonna fly it. in
oh,
half
did
hour.
that ad hoc, yeah, I
Okay.
love it.
That's
We'll
awesome.
let you know
That's
after
awesome.
the first of the year on all of the organizations that are getting money. And just, it's really starts here with this community. Because without this, we couldn't have done the show, we couldn't have gotten the money, and we can't give it back to the community. And we picked some number one funds that were very critical during California, feeding people, and helping people. So that's kind of the direction we got to. The majority goes to the CHP Widows and Orphans Fund, but we are rewarding other people and other organizations, and more so than we ever have. Even a little bit to Ponderosa Band for playing up and down, a couple times. So their band ministers gets a little bit, but we'll let you know the list, and be able to see that.
Yeah.
We just we're tweaking it.
Because I'd like to put that out.
We will, we'll forward it all out to you. We haven't been able to do that in the past. We're gonna make sure, again, barring any emergencies,
Yeah.
we're gonna be much more organized, and we have a year to plan.
We're pretty
Close
excited
to a
about
year.
this amount of money. We've
Yeah,
had this
yeah,
much.
we have.
So it's successful in terms of the amount of money. I mean, what is the
Absolutely,
measure?
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the most we've raised.
Most we've raised,
So-
most tickets we've ever had, most cars we've ever had.
And to be very honest with you, I think we had more cars the previous year before we shut down, about
Yeah.
320, I believe. So we know the participation is just gonna grow. And like I said, we'll try to make sure we avoid any other show that we can make sure that we can focus on
Yeah.
here. And we'll find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any comments? All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you so
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to next year.
Yeah.
Special, yeah. There's two of them. Oh, they're all the same blue. That's right. And you guys pick them. Going out to the car. Yeah, he wants to call the other kid out the other car. Well, he said some kid go get that two
Hey.
thousand special. Don't get one. Oh. And they picked the other one, it wasn't happening.
Hey, Alex. Hi, Julie. Thanks, guys. Moving on the agenda. Finance report. And I don't have those reports yet. I'll send the sharing to you. Okay. Let's see. I'm unable. I think you should be able to share now. Yep. Is that me? Oh, that's because I'm sharing simultaneously. Okay. I'm gonna turn it so that you can see.
Payments over the last month, we had the server company, we had the money for the March payment, which is just interest. So that all looks good. The only movement has been the administration fee of about $1,000 for NBS, which manages the bonds. So that's the status of the assessment district.
And that's once a year, right? You say that?
The $1,000.
Yeah.
I think it's once a quarter.
Or once a quarter.
So it's not that cheap. Let's look at the balance sheet for the airport. So checking looks pretty good because we got the first 20,000 of the second airport recovery grant program. So expecting about 12,000. I may recommend to the board that we transfer maybe about $20,000, which is what we received so far into the restricted airport account. And for whatever project we may have, but we probably need a motion to do that. But we did that for the CARES grant, all we moved half of that into the restricted area. Streets currently about close to 50,000 and airport restricted 25 for the various projects. I think the only other we have about 60,000 in the fuel accounts, and we just actually received fuel last week. So that's where we've gone down to about 30,000 now, and then we have so we have full tanks right now.
Was that show fully? So what we actually have right today is less than 39. Today, because we bought fuel, we have less than 39,000.
Yes, exactly. And then, of course, our inventory of fuel is more than what you see right here. Any questions on that? Okay, that is expenses and income from the beginning of the fiscal year to the end of October. Everything looks pretty much on track at this point. Remember, the budget numbers you see here is are the budget for the whole year and just prorated for the amount of the year that's come. So that's why sometimes folks are a little skewed. For example, the special tax income, we have received that from the county that comes in. So income looks good at this point. Expenses, we're still waiting for some big bills to come in for hangar door repairs and for fuel system repairs, and we are still waiting for the work to be done as well. So try to get along by fixing the springs ourselves and the hangar door, but it only lasts a week or two. But in general, everything looks on track, and I think we are pretty. So it's hard to say what those come in at, but we expect about 4,000 for the hangar doors and at least 4,000 to 5,000.
So we're looking at roughly 9,000 to 10,000.
And then we have the approved expenses for the hoses as well. And those.
Which was another 1,000 or so, 800,
No, it was about 2,000.
2,000. Okay, so we're at about 12,000 more.
So it comes so far about 8,000. This has appreciation that to that amount, but otherwise 30,000 over budget to the farm. As I said, we have a lot of outstanding expenses. So overall, we look okay for this year, and with the extra airport recovery grant program, we will probably do okay for this fiscal year.
This is the last grant we're ever,
What's that?
the last COVID grant we're,
Probably.
yeah.
You said our last grant?
Well, no, I'm sorry,
It's just for
from COVID,
Oh.
COVID related.
You see the total of $75,000 in grant money.
So which is a huge boost, but that goes away.
So that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
We got the Caltrans money yet?
We got it from the previous fiscal year.
We still have the Caltrans.
All right, I will stop sharing.
Okay,
All right, it's all yours.
go back to the agenda.
All right, I contacted BZ today and they gave me the dates that they're going to be coming out. They're scheduled to come out on the 29th. They got the approval for the hot fleet to use from the county and the manufacturer. So that's why they had to stop last time, because the county stopped them because they needed to get approval from the manufacturer, and then it's a long time getting approval from the manufacturer and then having the epoxy sent. But it's for the 29th, and then they have a secondary day where they're going to come out and test on the 3rd, and that's if it takes too long for them on the 29th to do an actual test. So that's their backup date for that. For the hangar door, I called them again today. On Friday, I was told that they were receiving the materials. Today, I was told that the materials never arrived on Friday. So since they have a short week due to Thanksgiving, they're going to be coming out next week. But I don't have a confirmed day that they're going to be coming out because they're still waiting for the springs and the Swiss eyes to arrive for the interrupted feed.
So the springs, they still have to, they don't have the springs yet, do you?
They don't have the springs yet. So it's just waiting for them to get all of that together before they can come out. And it's not going to be this week because of Thanksgiving. So they're going to be out next week.
Hopefully next week. They felt pretty good about that.
It was a thing of voicing my exasperation about having to wait as long, so they said we're gonna prioritize getting out the next week because it's been so long.
You tell them we have people trapped in the hangar and they've been there for a couple months now and
We're just slipping crackers.
we're slipping crackers in.
Runway lights, that was Terry actually installed the UPS for the lights, so that's uninterrupted power supply. So the issues that we have been having about lights going out, I haven't received any reports for that in my regular tests multiple times a day as I'm going to and from the office. They've been working off of the 3 clicks, so it does not appear that we're having any issues anymore. Fuel sales, we're about 26,000, so a little bit lower than we have been in the past. That's mostly due to fog.
2,600.
2,600 gallons.
26,000, so more than we have in fuel tanks.
2,600 gallons.
2,600 gallons. Lots of fuel has caused that to not fuel the fog. And people haven't been filling up as much. Mowing report, thanks to the record and all the volunteers. Place is great. It's the best that it's looked since I've been here at least, and I think keeping on top of it, it's going to continue to look very good with the traffic. Fence repair status, the fence over by your loan that was driven into by vehicle about a month or so ago.
Month or so.
It's been repaired. The total cost was $2,450, and that's been sent up to our insurance, and the insurance is currently working towards a claim. They're trying to track down the driver's information because it still hasn't been provided. So it's mostly handing them control and saying, this is all the information we have. And it comes down to it. We have to pay the deductible.
So did we pay that bill?
That bill has been paid, just so that way it's not something that goes into collections and then it's going with the insurance.
Okay, so we would get reimbursed.
We, from the insurance,
If it-
is gonna be coming back from them for that. It's mostly just making sure that we're not in debt as we're moving forward for that. That goes into the insurance claim, so we can hear from that. Northgate on, was it Thursday?
Yeah, last Thursday.
Last Thursday, Marion was out on a walk and he noticed that the north gate that leads into the airport, the through gate for aircraft is coming off of the track. It had already come off the track, so when he brought out a jack and put it back on, he noticed that it was, the roller was riding up on the rails. And so he went out there and took some coat hangers and he wrapped it around so that way it's not going to be slipping off the track as much. And it's a long-term solution, but it's more needing to go and purchase the same sort of fence piping that's there, so that way the fence doesn't keep rolling off the track. But that's just another repair.
Is this the gate up by Bill and Julie's house?
Yes. That one up there. Other repairs, we put out a quick report that be kind to the bonding reels. Someone through some way or another that the bonding reel on pump 2 to just let it go. I didn't see it, it was just responding to it that it got all wrapped up in it. So just putting out a reminders, be kind.
Be kind to our reels.
I'll be putting up a notice probably by the fuel pump to just ease it in slowly. Fire extinguishers, the new cabinets and the new 20-pound EC fire extinguishers have arrived and been installed. Don Bradley actually helped me with the installation of it and attaching some Velcro on the hammer, so I'm going to swing it around. And I'm going to be applying some car wax to it because the plastic is going to get beat up by the sun. And then landscaping debris, I still haven't figured out who dropped off the debris, but now the gate that was originally installed for allowing fire access, it now has a padlock. So the only way to get into the airport is to go through the key card access. So anyone who is going to be dropping off debris in the future is going to have to bring that up, so that way we don't have random foliage and trash that gets dropped off over there.
That's good. Any questions, comments? I don't know. Did we, did we pay your expenses, did it, well, that's from last month. Did we pay the fence repair bill, or that's to go yet on that?
We did.
Okay, so it's approved.
It would show up until next month.
Right, okay.
It was paid on the last cycle, so I dropped it off. And Wednesday.
I must have missed it because my writing. The field roads, do those,
Oh, the kilos,
Oh, yeah.
stated that due to the supply chain issues, I was notified that they're not gonna get here until next month.
okay, so they're not available. Okay.
Speaking of mowing, Dave, any thoughts on storing the tractor for shelter?
I'm sorry?
Any thoughts on the tractor and storing in shelter, where we could put that, or?
We are promised to put it under some sort of cover or shelter. Until we get something on the airport, maybe attached to the electrical light house. Maybe we have a volunteer effort to build the overhead for it, that would be nice. But meanwhile, it's stored in my house.
Yeah.
Until we get some sort of shelter. So
Okay, I think maybe the next thing we'll talk about some ideas or something, how to, or talk with you to see what you're, because I'd like to see that not exposed there. Because the airport looks great now.
yeah, I'd like to not have it in my driveway.
Yeah.
What do we need to do? Build an overhang?
Shed. You know those galvanized square tube sheet metal covered. That's all we do. You know, right in one video for $600 and it just goes all the pre-requisites. We just get some 4x4s. They don't come 100% metal, and they actually drive stakes through the bottom rails and build that shed. But it doesn't have any sides. It's just a over. Just a little. Actually, you know, actually online, they drop them off on the outside.
Wonder if we could install that next to the light shed. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, is you use the light shed as your anchor shear.
There's a company that sells those. If you go up to Ponderosa, they're on the right-hand side. And so I think that, I don't know if they'd be less expensive, more expensive, but there is a company that just sells.
Yeah, I've seen them, yeah.
And you can get the very smallest one, and they're pretty reasonable.
I mean, check it out and get some dimensions, or they need to store it and check it's available, yeah.
Probably Lee's feed. Probably sells
No,
some.
I've seen those type of shelters are,
Yeah.
they're all over the place.
On that fence issue, is there a deductible on our insurance that we're gonna have to make up for?
So right now, it's going to be $1,000 deductible if they can't get the insurance from the driver. So it's handing it off to them, it's talking with our insurance rep. And she says she's gonna be sending it down. They know who did it. They know who did it, it's just in the police reports of accuracy.
The owner of the vehicle is also responsible. So if you get the owner of the vehicle, talk to them, they have to provide their insurance.
So what was provided on the police report, which has still not been changed, is that the owner is listed as someone who stole the vehicle about a year and a half ago. So they sent me the.
It's not-
Report.
Yeah.
Showing that they did sell the vehicle, it's just now it's trying to get the driver of the vehicle who doesn't have insurance, as far as I can tell.
Thank you, Dominic. Update on procurement contracts. We've talked about this fuel system repair. It's kind of an old line. I think we're looking at, what did we say, about it's more than that now. I think about $5,000. So, or $8,000, I think you said, for the repairs on the fuel system. So hopefully get that done soon. Volunteer service hours, I didn't get it done in time to include it in here, but we're about 130 hours of volunteer time. Let me see. And that's a variety. I just show back up here. Sorry about that. I got to get my word back up here. No, that's not it. There we go. Go back up. Yeah, about 130 hours of volunteer. We had 16 hours of mowing time. And so thank you very much, Dave, for arranging that, because the airport looks great right now. This mowing season also has this nice green look to it instead of the brown that's grown in. So it really looks good. The rest of it has been spending lots of the 130 hours has been working. We'll talk about it a little bit, but Glenn's been working on getting the planning for the taxiway painting. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Canute's put a lot of time in with the infrastructure committee, the audit, supporting the audit. Jeff is beginning some work, and we'll talk about that coming up here when we talk about the hangar proposal. And I've been doing a bunch of stuff on financials and modeling and stuff. It's been a very busy month sitting in front of a computer and trying to get good data. Any questions from the board on that? So we continue to get good support from the volunteers. That's what it takes to run this airport. Public comment, again, as a reminder, only items in a jurisdiction CPAD to be considered. Statements for the board to be heard during the public meeting. Comments limited to 1 5-minute comment per person per topic. Requests requiring board action referred to staff. I think that's Dominic as the staff. And brought to the appropriate agenda. What I'd like to do is anybody has comments is for, and I think we've been doing this since the board to recognize, for that part. With that, anybody public comments? Phil?
I delivered the other day a sample of paving, an overlay. Dominic the other day, and I think some of you have had a chance to look at it. I provided the contractor. This is not something that I think is the greatest thing in the world or the worst thing in the world. It's just something that was able to get did for you. They're looking at 300,000 for approximately 1 million square feet of air park here. It is about a 1/4 inch overlay. So it's basically a slurry seal with the largest particle less than 1/8 of an inch. So if anybody's considering worrying about sand, and it's all encapsulated within a base, like a tar base. So that's something for you guys to look at. I think I gave you a card for the company. So you have that if you're interested. They're interested in talking with you. They think that with that overlay, the repairs would be a 7 to 10 year repair. And but no matter what we do, it will also help fill in some of the cracking. In other words, it's not going to be a crack seal, but when they take an overlay,
It fills, right?
it into the cracks, it will fill them.
Right.
But the cracks will reappear. There's no way to stop that. There really is no way to stop that because of the movement of the asphalt as it expands and contracts throughout the different stages.
Right.
You're just going to hold that. So that's something for you.
Well, it gets to start in the planning because we know that you're taking care of these roads. So which starts with a slurry seal of some type
Right.
here relatively soon in the next few years or so, keeps us from having to resurface the road for a long time.
Well, that and the pricing can change depending on the oil pricing.
Right.
So right now, oil is through the roof. And maybe if things settle down and change, that price may vacillate.
Yeah.
What's the product?
Do you know the product name?
They call it type 1. It's approved by the FAA in California. And it's a type 1 slurry seal. They have here's another card. And so it's approved by FAA and it's also approved by Caltrans. So it's something that's out there to use. It's a product that would get put on and then rolled.
Hot rolled or some hot.
I would still look at other options before I zeroed in on anything because this is just happens to be one that's available. I had to do some asphalt work for me and I asked.
Yeah.
So they gave.
Well, I appreciate that to get the data point because we have not contacted anybody for quite a while. As we move forward on this, we got to get
You have a
smarter.
sample, and I think that sample gives you an idea of what it is, and I don't think it's anything that is going to cause damage to propellers. I would want to see it where they put it and make sure that it isn't taking and chipping up. And that would be my
Yes.
concern is adhesion to the current surface. So that would be,
Yeah, we don't need little 1/4-inch potholes forming.
well, that are quarter size chunks of that stuff coming up. And so you wouldn't want that either. That's where instead of a slurry seal, a seal coat may be something else to look at because it's less than an 1/8 inch thick or about an 1/8
Yeah.
inch thick. And you'll have less possibility of it chunking out. And I think that's the term.
You can find we're going to be hitting this really detailed next year to get, well, we're almost over.
Only difference is with the seal coat, you're looking at about a 3 to 5 year lifespan, and this is 7 to 10.
Right.
So even if it's twice as much, when you consider striping and all the other things that are congruent with it, who knows, it's like.
To do the trades.
Yeah, it's how much you want to make. And they would have to go through before they did this and mechanically remove all the plastic striping. So that would, then they have a machine that does that. And all have to come off so that way it doesn't pop off of that.
Thanks, Phil. There's some good considerations that we got to move into that.
Well, I
Next year we start
don't
planning.
think about it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Any other comments? Okay,
I have some stuff on the fuel system too, if you want to wait for that.
I think we'll wait for that, yeah, yeah. On an old business, I mentioned, I'd like to kind of take this and put this on the next 2 items under new business here. Because it's kind of a change in plan, I like to approach it, I'd like to discuss with the board. Moving on, David, anything, update on obstruction here?
Nothing to report on the obstruction or the jurisdiction issue. Under legal, I did support the auditor this last couple of weeks. With some reports about our liabilities and things like town insurance coverage and anticipated claims, but nothing new on those
Okay,
2 updates. I do expect to have something new for you by January.
okay. Excellent, thank you, David. Continued audit status.
Stage that the bonus for the banks and the legal counsel about information that the auditor is seeking. We met with them at the airport office a week ago or so.
That's 2 weeks.
And they questioned myself as a treasurer and Dominic as the airport manager about our procedures and financial processes, and then we gave them a tour of the district. So this is the first time that this company audited, so we showed them the boundaries and residential and airport side. So they reported back to our key program that they thought it went well, but we expect to get more questions as they start getting into the details of it, but so far so good. We also asked the auditor to complete the annual financial transaction report that we have to file with the state, and they were actually cheaper with that as well compared to the previous audit, which charged us $200 for that.
So it's going pretty smooth, it's going pretty well, and you're happy, are you happy with them?
I'm happy with so far. It's 2,000 less than our previous one.
Excellent, and we're going to do this every year now, the audit.
Yes,
Is there a plan?
and this is the 2 audits we're doing right now for the fiscal year 1920.
Good, excellent. Thank you, Knut. Airport signage update plan. We talked about that because we've got to, when you look around, we've got a bunch of things to do. Dominic is going to be heading that up.
Yeah, it's just getting started on it right now. It's pretty much just not too much to report. It's also looking into some ideas for moving some of the signs as well. It's making it more visible. I get constant calls about where they're supposed to go after they park the trains in too. So you might put some stuff where the office is as well. So,
Yeah, just because this is for the airport signage plan, the streets is a separate
So it's
one.
putting in signs
Yeah.
like train seat parking, no runoff areas, the noise abatement signages and stuff like that, so that way, and no runoff areas as well. I don't know if I said that already, but just addressing continual issues and complaints in regards to.
But thank you. Look forward to hearing that. Right now, it's a PowerPoint charts. And we'll handle the streets separately. Oh, no trespassing signs. I forgot to look for those in today when it's up there. Obstruction mitigation update for me. I have really no update on that. I got to still pick up to do what Borough was doing in terms of calculating heights on Boeing in particular, so we can start issuing that. Speaking of which, we have not heard from Caltrans, our inspection, right? We haven't heard anything yet.
I haven't heard anything from Caltrans about that inspection.
Yeah, our normal inspection is kind of in the October timeframe. We have not contacted them at the same time, but they haven't scheduled anything with us. Painting taxi each end of Boeing, which is part of our Caltrans inspections. You recall we had to get rid of the X's, number one, and then Caltrans wanted us to paint taxi on that. Glenn is heading that project up. How are we doing, Glenn?
So we have, I've laid out the taxiway lettering, and if we get into the verbiage of the advisory circular that talks about how to paint these letters, minimum size and so forth, it turns out that there might be quite an opportunity to save money on materials as far as paint. Based off what Burl had previously laid out as far as the dimensions, I found a discrepancy between that and the verbiage in the advisory circular, which means that we could make the letters still 60 feet tall. Burl had actually proportionally grown them to fill the width of the taxiway with proportional margins. So we can probably stick with 60 feet letters if we follow the letter of the advisory circular. So it's about a 20% savings in yellow paint possible, and the original plan was to paint a big black rectangle around the taxiway letters to outline them. And digging into the advisory circular further, I found out the letters only need to be outlined in black. So that'll probably take the black lettering cost, which was, do you remember the square footage? It was a lot of square footage to make a 60 by 120 foot rectangle, just probably to about 20% of that. So
it's a lot less than what we thought.
If my interpretation is correct.
So the basic plan is, we're talking earlier for the rest of the board, is to take those minimum dimensions and lay those out in chalk on the street. Paint half the street at a time, do you think? Because of traffic.
Yeah, for traffic. I've got the tape measures, and I don't have a chalk line that'll reach that far, but we can get one that'll.
Where the street, on the streets?
Either under Bowen.
Were the X near where the,
Yeah, there was an X there, and now it would be taxi. At either end.
TAXI.
TAXI. So if you were on approach, you'd be reading it left to right.
Yeah.
on Boeing?
And they need to put taxi, needs some 60-foot tall letters.
Yes.
You're kidding me. That's gigantic.
But when you're,
6 stories tall.
yeah. The background, Greg, is when we had the, several years ago, we got dinged on the lights. One of the things Caltrans wanted to get rid of was the X's on Boeing, which had been there for decades.
I've been here 40 years.
It's,
They don't even have the letter 60 feet tall.
Yeah.
I heard it and I was like, totally crazy.
yeah, we're going by what's in the advisory circular that we're supposedly supposed to meet.
I mean, I would think 10 feet tall, big X.
They even had a note in there for taxiways that have been in the past mistaken for runways with planes land on them. And that's where I got the outline information.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, this is,
Which these have.
yeah. No, particularly when we took the X's off. We had several people. Yeah. So When do you think you like, you have any idea when you think you're gonna actually do the painting or work party or what's that?
No, I can do that. We can schedule
Okay.
the layout. Anytime. If we put it down with chalk, it's not gonna last.
Is that Phil?
When you're ready for the paint, please let me know, you get 50% discount at Kelly.
Okay, what kind of paint do we have to get?
So I don't know what type of paint we need.
There ain't no pretty face
Don't
on
really know
this.
that one, but I don't know anything about painting streets. I can do the geometric layout, no problem.
There's a special street paint that they use, it's called marking paint, and depending on what you want, I don't know if they want the glass beads in it or not want glass beads. Glass beads get sprinkled on it, the paint gets laid down, but I don't know what they're gonna push for.
The AC doesn't say anything other than, I think, than yellow. Maybe it doesn't specify.
It's probably in there somewhere.
I went, let's look at it again. I didn't see anything.
But my markings are always white.
Right.
And they're yellow
Yeah.
ones too.
Yeah, it just says yellow. It doesn't say what kind of paint.
Oh, my
Okay.
yellow reflective kind of like wood, just so. Show up at night. Lights went over it. You know, where-
Well, it doesn't have runway.
Well, there's
Yeah.
no runway.
There's no-
No, but you know how you know how it's like, you see it, on the road all the time, certain paint.
Yeah, they're reflective, yeah.
Just plain
Yeah.
yellow, it has like
Mhm.
a
Yeah,
sparkle
it
in it or something.
The glass beads.
Glass beads.
That's what he's
That's
talking
not
about.
right, yeah.
But I want to thank Glenn for doing this because if you recall, when we were starting to look at this last time and looking at contractors doing it, we're starting to get in the $10,000 range. And we'll obviously save a lot of tremendous money we laying out and having work party and volunteers paying it.
Yeah. Phil, you know if this is a spray or roller?
No, it comes in gallons,
Gallons.
and we can use an airless, paint.
Okay.
And if you don't have one, I do.
No.
But yeah, you normally use an airless and we mask it off somehow. It needs a mask with paper
Mhm.
and spray it. But it's pretty common. It comes in 5-gallon bottles.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Get back to,
Or you can roll it.
oh, it does show up there. Okay, thank you, Glenn. Well, at least we have a plan in place and we go to Caltrans, we can say we're getting that done.
I think that for just pricing purposes, that paint runs about 300 square feet per gallon. So if you're trying to figure out how much paint you need, it's not, you'll get about 300 square feet out of the gallon.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, okay, so moving on to new business. Talk about the plan as we move forward. We've been talking about for a long time, as you know, for looking at the ballot measure that Phil originally had proposed for the board to consider. And we did have an infrastructure finance committee, which with Burl leaving, I'm on the committee now and Knut is the chair. And what I'd like to show for board consideration, oops, that's not it. Let me find my PowerPoint charts. For the board, here is kind of a plan to go, how we go forward on this from here. As I mentioned, I spent a lot of time trying to model this. I think I've improved the models. It still needs to be fully vetted.
First hearing it.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me reshare here. Let's see. I think that's it.
There you go.
Okay, good. Thank you. We get to presentation mode. Uh-oh. Just thinking about it. Let me see if I go. That's what I want. I'm just going to go back to regular. Run faster. This is just a couple of several charts here to try to show what at least kind of the thinking coming out of the finance committee here. And what I want to do is work with the finance committee because they've been set up to consider these things in more detail. But the basic plan, again, this is for the discussion here with it, is to review and validate the proposed financial tiers, which I'm going show what those are here, propose financial performance indicators, financial inputs in the models. We're not going to go into that tonight here. And then we'll evaluate key scenarios. And we've been kind of doing this before, but we've been validating the models. And then we'll develop recommendations to go to the board and also for the public finance meetings. And I'm going to show a schedule on that, proposed for that to support ballot measure. First of all, on the tiers, and I think a lot of you here have heard me talk about it. I'm not sure if you've heard, but what proposing is to address some lessons learned coming out of Measure P, and as well as giving our board and future board guidance on how money is handled. What I'm proposing is that we kind of think of tiers here of funding level, and it also would be a quick check of where the airport is roughly in kind of the next 12 months or so. The lowest and the worst thing we never want to be in is tier 0, which means we don't have sufficient funds to maintain daily operations. Basically, we're going in default, and without additional funds, the airport will close. Tier 1 is sufficient funds to keep the airport operating day to day with minimal obstruction mitigation, minor repairs only, minimal equipment maintenance. Not funded are reserves to maintain the pavement, repair failing infrastructure. Sorry about my wording here, but major repairs are not funded. In other words, the infrastructure here, the pavement primarily, and the matching funds that we have to raise to do that are not funded under tier 1. Tier 2 says you can tier 1 and have funds to maintain long-term sustainability of the airport. Because you're accumulating funds for the pavement maintenance. And we believe the pavement maintenance has come under a 10% match that we get through Caltrans. But to understand, that's the way it's been handled in the past year. So in terms of the dollars, it's only 10% we have to come up with. Again, this is not streets. This is completely separate. Tier 3, oh boy, tier 3 would be great. It says you can go tier 2, but you also are able to put away funds for reserve for purchasing property. And for building matching grants for major improvements or major reserves for minor improvements and major contingencies. But that would be the extra money that says we got the infrastructure taken care of here, not improvements necessarily, but the infrastructure taken care of. Now we can move on to putting money aside for hopefully future purchases of property and contingencies, and so forth. Streets are a different animal. It's a little bit harder to do. But tier 0, the idea you don't want to be in tier 0, says you have insufficient funds to do any significant maintenance. No funds beyond property tax from county added to street maintenance accounts. Rate of street growth account is not sufficient to fund maintenance for maximum street life, that is resurfacing, without bonds or loan. Street pavement will eventually fail, which is where we are today. Tier 1, it goes up from there. Now we're starting to accumulate money to take care of the slurry seals and maybe some crack seals. Not maybe sufficient to do the resurfacing, because that's a real long-term thing. Resurfacing has to be done with bonds and loans. And tier 2 says you step up and now you're accumulating funds to eventual resurfacing, to do resurfacing without having to resort to bonds or loans. Tier 3, which just says now we can, not only that, we can do improvements like drainage improvements and stuff to go on feed in there. I don't think we've ever been there. So where we are today with that idea, based on all the work and time spent looking at the financials in the last 3 years of performance or so, it's a little sometimes clouded because we've received $75,000 the last few years from the CARES grant, but looks like we're in a tier 1 status. Here, we can handle the day-to-day operations, handle, as you've seen, if you've been to the board meetings, we can handle the repairs and stuff, but we don't have sufficient funds to go forward with the matching grants for the streets and fuel system replacement. However, it's also to note that inflation, which we're particularly seeing more and more inflation, will, unless there's intervention, will drive that to a tier 0 someday, maybe 10 years, but without changes, it will go to tier 0. Streets right now, as mentioned, we're in currently tier 0 status. Streets, we're talking about the slurry seal. Recommendation in the reports, which I can't really validate because it's been so long, was saying that we should get a slurry seal in 2023. I think that was a report that came out when the streets were resurfaced a number of years ago. But you can see how the streets are starting to develop those cracking. So it's got to be fairly soon. So that's what all is driving us, everything here, is to keep the long-term sustainability with the airport and the streets. Now, how do we go to, well, then what are other long-term needs for long-term stability, sustainability? Our critical near-term needs, especially for the airport, is the fuel system. We've been talking about that quite a bit. We've got to get rid of that risk sitting in the ground. That's our potential financial time bomb with us. And then the street slurry seal or slurry coat, however we do that. But the idea is we got to coat that so that the streets don't deteriorate fast, where we end up having to face chunks of the road coming out and then resurfacing. Because once it reaches a certain point, you can't slurry seal it, you have to resurface. So what I'm classifying as the midterm critical needs is the airports. We got to have the matching funds for the airport layout plan, because that's the gateway toward getting the matching funds from Caltrans and the FAA, and also the pavement maintenance. Streets, funds for eventual crack sealing and slurry seals. We'll talk long term, with the streets is the resurfacing. So one of the things that have come up is, how do we manage this? And this is really the reason why they reserve 2 accounts. We're going after money. Assuming right now we're in a tier 1 status, again, it's got to be fully validated. But if we're going after money through special assessments, rate increases on hangars and things like that, that we set up or call them tier 2 accounts, or whatever we call them. But the idea, they're restricted reserve accounts where we're accumulating money for a set purpose to go into. So we set up accounts as this is for the airport pavement maintenance. The way we break it down by runway or so, aprons or taxiways, should be determined. But the base idea is, when we see money come in, you see the accounts build. What we have right now, you see in the balance sheet, we have a restricted airport fund. That's essentially the same thing. We've been just putting money into that since it's been on board. We haven't withdrawn any money from that, right? It just keeps building then. And that's what we have. I forget your numbers are for the airport, 20, 30,000 now. And the streets have about $48,000, $50,000. Then by having that money pegged in there, this board, future boards, and the public can see where that money is going and allocated to. That is, it would take board actions, board votes, as we do now, to transfer that money someplace else. And of course, that is done in a visible manner. Then those account balances, project progress and status, and by project I mean the maintenance activity that we do, is a standing agenda item at board meetings. Oops, excess page. So that's how we propose to manage the money, to make it visible, as opposed to just put it in a general account, but to make sure we're focused as a board, this board and future boards, on what we need to do for the airport. So a way to do that, so we can go with our eyes open on what we need and what it takes, and then ultimately what we ask for. We've set up analysis models, this Excel spreadsheet. It takes a 21-year outlook. This is originally done because the street resurfacing was seen to be at the measured P time 20-some years, so it just went out that far. Of course, in between you got the slurry seals, so it's a long time. I'd extend it out to 2042 because if we do a loan to do the fuel system, assuming it's 20 years, it goes all out to 2042. So Excel spreadsheet. It looks at project savings, savings for the reserve and the spend schedule. So it's a calendar type layout, and that can be adjusted and changes rates. And it can be evaluated for both constant dollars, which we've been doing, so no inflation basically, as well as now a feature in it where you can put in a inflation factor in there to adjust for inflation for income and expenses. Primary purpose of that maybe is if we look and evaluate the impact of additional revenue coming in from a constant year dollars, which would then close the budgets for the 21 years. Then you put an inflation factor in, and you'll see that we run out of money, say in 15 years from now or something like that. So say if there's inflation, you eventually got to go back to wealth to cover it. As we are in a situation now, tier 1 will go away because the special tax is fixed. It is where it is now since 1995. It hasn't changed. And of course, that buying power is diminished, and it'll eventually catch up to us. Fortunately, I think our financial performance and the money has been pretty good. It's allowed us to be in tier 1 status. And so I think so the recommendation that will be coming up for the board, again, not as we move into the, go through this process, is the new ballot measures, the amounts and schedule. If we look at new revenue for the hanger and tie downs, I think we haven't got to that yet, but Jeff is involved with that. And then how to manage your reserve accounts as we move forward. Now, from a schedule, so that's what I see for the board is coming up, particularly next several meetings, perhaps the first 2 meetings next year. Can you see this? Can you see the schedule on this? Or I gotta stop sharing, okay. So we're proposing, and subject to board talking, and see if I can make this bigger. Oops, right there. This is, of course, next year. As a district, we have the certain rules to follow by, as we know from our Measure P experience. Right now, we can support the general election in November, on November 8th. Seems really far away, but here's what we're up against. We as a board have to submit the measure language to the El Dorado County Register of Voters here by July 6th next year. Before that, and working backwards, we have to have a board meeting that does the final approve that, a regular board meeting which does the final approval, which is June 27th. And before that, we have to have another regular board meeting where there's the measure reading and approval. And the board, that's part of the introduction officially to the board of the measure. So it's kind of an initial approval the board has to make. Then we have to, at the next regular meeting, do the final approval and then submit it to the Registrar of Voters. Backing off of that, we have to have a 45-day period. The 45-day period between this board meeting here in May and when the notice goes out, and it has to be mailed U.S. Postal to the residents here that officially notices somebody with the assessment information, about what's being proposed. Again, the amounts here don't necessarily have to be final, but the purpose, and this is all under Prop 218, we fall under, that starts the clock when we can, well, it has to be at least 45 days notice, and we have to do a required public meeting in that time frame to officially have it. So we're required to do one public meeting. So that puts us around, what I'm proposing is that date would be April 1st. When you just backing this off, that's when the mailings go out. But the approval to go forward with that would occur at the March 28th meeting, when the board meeting reviews the package that would go out in the mailings and then mailed out a little while later. Then to move forward from that, we have a board meeting on February 28th and then one on January 24th. What I'm proposing is that we have up to 3 public meetings to talk about the finances here and get public input on that. So we'll have to put information together here, which I think we're largely on the way, and go have a public meeting to address those things of how we're going to, where we are financially, what the needs are, and what the proposals to do it, and get some discussion going on that. And I think we can have at least two meetings. They try to get the number of people here. We want to get as many people as we can. We tend to get the same dedicated group of people, the people here. We need more people to do this who have stakeholders in this. And then we could have, perhaps, depending on, a third meeting or so. We have to see how the needs go. Then we'll get pizza parties or something with the treasure of people. We did that last year or last time at Measure P. So this process really starts off at about the mid-time frame in January. And what I'm thinking, Canute, is we have a finance committee meetings, right in that, right, yeah. To at least to kind of start, because we're heading the holidays here, but starting in mid-January, because or before. I'm just not back. I'm not back to mid-January.
Just a little bit input, we have a proposal from Phil as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this agenda is to get the feedback and get the buy-in as much as we can in the community here. So what we need to go forward. But in terms of my experience in modeling, it comes up with some pretty interesting stuff that supports some of the stuff that we've been talking about. David?
Has the IFC been able to put a number next to tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 to model what the per parcel contribution would have to be to reasonably estimate that we can get into the next tier with this? we can
Yes.
get in the next tier with that?
Based on the inputs and assumptions in the model, yes. And I've been working on here is refining that model. With the risk of, I don't want to go into detail, but let me just give you a glance of what that is. Just to try to show, I guess I want to feel some of the level of sophistication that we're doing in this. Let me try to bring it up here. But to answer the basic questions, yes. But what needs, now, can you see that on your screen at all? I can't, I got to stop sharing. Right there, okay. This is kind of a summary page here, but let me. It's not it's user friendly. It takes, you know, it's not, nobody can just step up and use this model. There's a lot of nuances to it. But it started, and I won't necessarily go through, but it starts with a list of projects. Tier 2 projects, and you can, in the model, you can turn on and off whether you want to do these projects or not. There's a schedule associated. Again, I'm not reviewing the programs here. That translates into this table here. For example, the fuel system loan, assuming it starts in 2022 and matures in 2042, but we're paying a monthly expense, or, you know, we're paying the loan off. So there's a yearly expense. You know, I happen to assume $28,000 based on, you know, the assumption of the loan. So that's an annual expense that comes with that. We get the fuel system up front. But of course, you're paying interest, principal and interest on it. And then other projects like slurry seals, you know, say there's not a whole lot here for the airport, but the slurry seals and the resurfacing show up on here, where the number appears, for example, at the bottom here, that's when we spend it. We save it up during this time, we spend it. We start saving here. This allows the model to start so we don't front load a lot of stuff and have a huge number. You can kind of spread it out. You can front load this and then the actual need starts dropping off. We try to adjust it manually to have it work. This still needs to be validated. Then there's a whole bunch of number calculations that goes through, adds it up, and there's a place to put in the proposed fee, you know, what the additional tax would be, as well as the ability to assume there's when you adjust for inflation, to add percentages for hanger income, tie down income, and so forth. And kind of a summary of what that looks like. There's a little chart that comes up. So for example, I'm going to turn off inflation here. It's just got to be the last one. We're going to do all the fuel system projects and the tier 2 projects, getting airport maintenance, based on $25 per month, constant year dollars in this case. Wow, it looks great. We're always positive. If you don't see red on this set of numbers in here, everything closes. Of course, it's without inflation. In fact, by the 2042 constant year dollars at $25 a month, we end up with total in cash and reserves of $500,000, you know, 20 years from now. So and this scenario turns positive. If we turn on, and I happen to have 3% inflation into this, but if I turn on inflation here, oops, I messed it up. But if I turn on the adding in inflation, in this case, 3%, this is what the model allows us to show. We start there's 2 accounts here. There's a reserve account and there's a cash account. I'm assuming $160,000 in that cash account. The cash account stays at that amount until about 2030 because our reserve account keeps dwindling. This says we're marching on, we're doing these projects. And we're just bleeding down the cash account because expenses keep going up, even though our income's going up, but the cost of doing these things goes up. And so finally, we run out of reserves in 2030, and we have to go to our cash account, which fortunately we got a lot of money in that, and then we run out of money there in 2036. That's a long time from now. So
What you're saying there is if you assume it's $25.
if you assume $25, right?
And you factor in inflation, we're gonna hit the wall.
We hit the wall, right? You know, and it depends what the inflation is. This happened to be 3%. If it's 4%, obviously you hit the wall sooner. But eventually you hit the wall because the special tax assessment is fixed until it's raised by the residents. Even though in this case, I'm raising everything up, raising up hangar income, tie down income by 3%, but the airport operations expenses are also increasing by 3%. Now, is that, it's kind of blank assumption, everything goes up by 3%. And the financials work out with crash there. So what it means is, and not necessarily this has to be vetted, but if we did $25, that works great for us until then we have to go back to the well in about 8 years or so. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to complete the projects. 8, 9, 10 years on. Does that work? That it work.
Do you factor in this cost savings from not having to deal with underground tanks?
That has not been factored in. That's the part
That's a huge.
that still needs to be put in here. Yeah. So
That's
there's,
a huge difference. It's probably $10,000 a year.
yeah, because those next level of details have not been put in here, but it is a big savings. Yeah.
You're truly going to get an accurate picture.
That's why I'm not ready.
Okay.
This model is not ready to make those recommendations for that reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's about $10,000.
Yeah. And that would change the model drastically, would change the model quite a bit. But it's that details, and I've got a financial table. We've taken the last 3 years of statements, putting them in, and kind of with numbers we could assume we could use. That needs to be fully vetted by the board. But I will point out, in terms of the health of the district here, when you look at the last 3 fiscal years, you can't really see, it's hard to see here, but when you total up what we have in cash minus liabilities here, I think we've managed this pretty well. Now we have got 75,000 from, but today we started out in fiscal year 2018 with about 191,000. It went down to 180. Well, no, if you take the total streets and everything, and to 2018 fiscal year, we were about 198,000. We went up to 206,000 the following year, and at the fiscal year of 2020, we had about 263,000. So the trend has been going up. At the same time, recognize the trend's going up because we're not spending money on maintenance in our infrastructure. Part of that is we don't have enough money to do with the streets. We just don't have enough money to go do that. That's why in the balance sheet, when Knut presents it, the depreciation on our infrastructure is dragging, that line down. But I'm trying to evaluate what do we really have here to spend.
Now,
But
on the airport side of this, you're also factoring in matching funds, so we're
Yes,
only
yeah,
coming up with 10%.
10%, right.
So the streets is a whole different.
Streets is
beast.
it.
I mean,
Streets
that's
is
it.
fixed, right.
In my, high level
Yeah.
look at it, that's the elephant in the room. It's like,
It is, yeah.
that's where the big money is that, FAA is not going to give us.
That is, I think that's a good way. That is the elephant in the room because we can see, if we take all that $25, put the airport, we're good for whatever, 10 years, but we got to make those adjustments because that will obviously move that time out.
I think that's going to make a huge.
It could add many years to it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you take in, I'm sure Canute will tell us what the cost is for insurance on an underground tank. That's about.
Well, actually, insurance is not turns out it's not the driving factor, but yeah.
And the licensing and the
Yeah.
fees.
It's all the inspections and permits.
Yeah, it's.
We've contacted insurance and basically said, well, that's about the same amount. We don't pay that much for insurance. It's all the, but anyways, it's when we factor there's in with Ken and I have been talking, it's a huge number. It's right. We just have to factor it in there. And that's not in there.
But you're gonna get a true picture on it.
Yeah. But the elephant in the room is streets. Streets is a big number because we have 100% of that to cost. And for example, the big bugaboo here is we're looking at resealing, and now the number's probably high in here, but and this has to be, there's a lot of work to do on here, but there's still going to be high numbers no matter what. But with inflation, I assume the street to resurface it in 2025 is 426,000. Don't know what that is, what it means, but it's a high number. That's what's driving if we're looking for funds, this is what drives everything here. If you pay for this, which is a lot because you're trying to save up $400,000 in 3 years, then you're golden for the rest of the time. You got resurfacing, everything taken care of. But that amounts to, that alone, let's see, they didn't close. That's about $70 a month under this model it takes to do the streets, $70 a month. Constant year dollars, that's where that number came from, says you can go pay for the streets. What's that?
That would go from now until eternity.
Now until eternity. Now, the problem is, under the model, you build that $70 a month because you want to pay for you want to save up money to pay for that in 3 or 4 years, the street resurfacing. And after that, you're just continuing to make money. So it doesn't need to be that high. It's a short-term thing.
But that's constant year dollars.
That's constant year
You know,
dollars.
We put in a 3% on that. That's, I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of equating the $25 we're currently paying in 1995
Yeah.
and saying it's never going to change, and it just buries you in a
Yeah.
hole.
See, actually, when you took the $70, which came with constant year dollars, and you put 3% on it, this shows that you can see the red starts showing up in 2000. It shows up here in 2041. You build up so much money, but eventually it catches up to you that you can't do the resurfacing. You're short. This is short. Let's see, you're short several $100,000 to do the resurfacing under that model with inflation. But you see, it happens so far out. But you change it by 1%, it changes everything.
Right. With the model that I came up with the double the current fee, which we've been able to operate under for the last 60 years. It may require a one-time assessment for street maintenance. In other words,
That's when the approach is.
what I'm thinking is like $1,000. And so if you take $1,000 plus the
Yeah.
other monies we have, that would give us approximately $120,000 from the one-time assessment, plus the other funding we have, which is $50,000, so I think it's 100.
Well, and plus we pick up about 14,000 per year from the current.
Right. And
This-
that was just what we currently have, and the $1,000 per property
This-
assessment, that would give us about,
This is those points you're making is exactly what we're looking for in this public meetings.
right, and we could possibly do that, but that would take and be a one-shot deal, and then we could start building on
Yeah.
top of that. And depending on what product we use for research. So I
Yeah.
think that would be it.
But that's fine tuning. We just know it's in hundreds of thousands of dollars now. So but you're right. It depends on what product. But that's the type of input when we have these public meetings, we're exactly looking for. That's haven't delved in that, hasn't occurred to us, but maybe that's how we solve it. It's just a one-time special assessment.
Well, we've just, excuse me for saying something, but we failed, I think, 5 times to raise the assessment. I think, and it's just, we failed 5 times. So rather than fail again, my thought is let's get something that we know will pass, and then take it,
Apps.
augment that with a special assessment. A one-time special assessment,
Okay.
and get the
Well-
streets done. And then we don't have to continue to worry about that for ever. I don't know.
So,
Assessments require room improvement.
yeah, and
No, and that's
and-
being upfront with all people on the property.
Yeah. So just to look at, as a quick review of this model, again, we don't have the fuel. If we don't do any projects, we don't do any projects, just to say where we are today, how long does tier 1 last with 3% inflation?
Question, Terry, does the
Yeah.
special assessment, if I missed it, is it the same process? Going through the county and the same process in the election, or is the special assessment have a different process?
I think
That's the same process.
Same process. Thank you.
I thought, no, that's why it's majority,
51% vote.
A majority.
and it's property owners, not voters. So it's not
Okay.
voters, property owner. That's.
It is
we are
different.
now.
Instead of 2/3, it's majority and it's the property owners, the 1 vote per property. Correct? No.
That's right, 1 vote per property.
Okay.
Two-thirds.
It does make a difference.
They don't even have to own property here, but they have to
Right.
live here in this district.
That's for the measures.
And if you're going to go for a special assessment, that's 51%, I think that you're going to get a pass on that. And so that's one of the reasons I'm thinking this may be worthwhile endeavor.
So Excellent. That's part of what the finance committee can be one of the recommendations of the board, but that's excellent. But just as a quick, using this model again with all the deficiencies in it, if we say we're going to have no assessment here, but we do adjust for inflation, but we're not going to replace the fuel system, which has a huge risk in itself, no projects. Under current today, tier 1 really lasts until about 2028. And then we deplete our reserves and we start digging into our checking account, so to speak. And finally, we run out of money in 2033. If we do nothing, that's the sunset today on the airport. But that also says nothing else fails.
And that's all the numbers on the Ouija board work out.
Yeah, you can never predict it down to the dollar, but you're trying to get in the ballpark. So anyways, for the board, that's what I propose, and see if there's any comments. We're going to hit this in January. You know, that we make the November meeting. We can't make the June because of all the back offs. We just missed it. But there's a lot of detail in here to go consider in here. Any other thoughts, comments? With that, we'll move forward with
Nice work, Ted.
we'll move forward then with sorry, I gotta think and do something at the same time here. Yeah. So good, thank you. It's good input. So it's going to be exciting next year. Hopefully with a positive outcome this time.
Yeah, I want to kind of get back to Dave's question here and get it like real simple, because for everyone needs to explain to me real simple. No, Dave asked a question, and I don't know, he got into a really long answer. He asked, how much per month would we need to achieve tier 1? How much a month per parcel would we need to achieve tier 2? And how much would we need to achieve tier 3? So can we get those kind of numbers so we can sell that to the rest of the residents? Like for tier 1, we're each gonna need another 25 bucks a month. For tier 2, we're gonna need another 50 bucks a month from everybody. And tier 3, we're gonna need, or whatever the numbers are. Can we get those numbers that are easier to put out there?
Well, yeah, that's what we're refining. I mean, we have an idea what we kind of need for tier 2 for the airport.
Right.
No, then the streets. So we got some estimates for the tier 2 for the streets. Yeah.
Go downhill. I think the goal is they'll have those numbers by the time we have.
Right. Yeah. Because you got to tweak it. You know, the fuel system saves us a lot of money. It's going to change the model. It's just not factored in.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
Things, you got to have something that keeps it a little bit simpler. All the stuff on projects, but it's just going to be.
Yeah, I agree with you completely because.
Well, Diane is going to be helping us out a lot with that.
Yeah, I have a model already, and yes, it's got to be simplified and boiled down exactly like you're saying. And I've got to start to it, but I'm waiting for the numbers to do that. But yeah, we need an easy formula for people to get it.
So if we like put the spreadsheet model on there for the general public, it's like,
I get it.
done.
Yeah.
It won't work. And no.
What I'm doing is giving you a glimpse, particularly it's aimed at the board here, because they haven't, Knut's seen it, but Glenn and Jeff haven't seen it. This is part of the sausage making in the background of producing the cards. Yeah.
And the message is exactly what you said at the beginning. It's highly sophisticated. It's these numbers weren't pulled out of the air, but then to explain them, you got to boil it down for people, and myself included. I can't look at that spreadsheet, mate. Everybody needs some kind of a net. This is what it means. This is the benefit. So on both sides, the air park and the other revenue.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you for the feedback, but that's our plan to go forward with it.
I for one want to encourage your depth of background and homework. I just will say this because of my 12-year frustration. When we voted in favor of the street assessment and we endured the grinding and the repaving, we voted yes because we were told that street would last 20 years. I think it was a big mistake. It was a mistaken project, scope and cost, method and financing.
For the resurfacing the
What
streets.
we drive on today.
You mean contract with us today?
No, what was
A
promised,
combination of factors.
what was promised to us didn't occur.
Exactly right.
No, that's why.
So this homework helps build confidence that we're gonna get it right this time, because some of this feel like we're paying twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's still, the assessment goes,
Some, and you have to excuse me, but some of my trepidation is I brought in someone before we did this road project that had 40 years of paving experience here in the Sacramento area. They own the largest paving corporation, and they own multiple paving corporations, and they told us not to do what we did.
He told us the truth and the board ignored it and went another way. And here you guys are saddled and having
They
to
told,
correct the.
they told us this would fail in a very short period of time, and it did.
After it.
No, this was before. This was way before. I brought in this paving contractor that did huge jobs for the
Yeah.
state of California.
Well-
And their thing was this Petromat was going to make it where we wouldn't get any more cracks. So you can see how well that.
Yeah.
worked.
well, that's what, my approach is, but, got to do this for best value long-term. Because many of us plan to be around here a long time. And the way we have our property values up and keep a nice place to live is do the right thing to begin with.
We will never get rid of the cracks. Just so you know, there's,
Okay.
the cracks will be here forever.
Unless we
Just because.
tear up the road completely, yeah.
Because when they originally put the road down, they put not a substantial, a substantial enough surface. The asphalt's moving on that, and it's just transferring the cracks. It's covering
Yeah.
the cracks right here.
That's when you drive, you see streets and other things in parking lots, you can see tell them where they did the
You're
section.
talking about the repave in 2009.
Yes, and then we're still paying for another 9 years.
I moved here about a month before it started. I thought it was just a gift for us coming in,
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah,
that's a
at least
good.
you have that in your-
Keep going. 20 years you'll be
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's-
so they, because I didn't realize that they didn't grind it. I don't know what the
They
technical.
ground it, but the thing is, unless you remove all the original asphalt.
Yeah, you
Just
got
take
it.
it
So
down.
it's the road base.
Yeah.
It's going to crack, and the road base we have here is
It's-
clay. So the road moves because of the heating and cooling of the asphalt.
Okay, I got it.
There ain't no stop.
because the roads, when they were put in the 60s, had no, they just put asphalt on top of the ground. Yeah.
Something that didn't work out.
Pretty much, that's exactly right.
How come you can't come back and make it?
Because it's been beyond the timeframe to sue.
He wasn't negligent. He did what he was hired to do. What the board was mistakenly believing was that what he was hired to do would be adequate for a 20-year road. After the board was told, it's not gonna work, guys.
And within 6 months after the repaving, I started showing them the cracks, and everybody goes, oh God, I can't keep, what?
In 24 months, they were exactly where they had been.
Yeah, and I'm not a pavement expert, but research I did on mine is that's what happens.
And the board refused to listen to the guy that had 40 years.
So we want to try to do the right thing here.
Right.
as
And I
much as they can.
understand,
Cheap-
excuse me, but that's why,
yeah.
that's why.
Cheapest is not always not knowing what went on then, but we need to do the right thing. We need to get the people who know this stuff to inform the board so you can make informed decisions. Last item on the agenda is we got a very good, say, a nice, generous, what do we call it, proposal, consideration by Foothills Flight Center to change their hangar leases and some other terms with that. It is to raise the rent up proactively. And we talked about this at the committee meeting, but the approach you'd like to take is this brings about, actually resurface the question of what about all our hangar leases and stuff, and are we doing the right thing? Not only lease wise, but also the rent wise. Are we underselling the hangars, for example, just in general? And so in the context spurred by what Foothills did and to kind of do our due diligence as a board, put that together, is look at the entire picture of our hangars or even our tie downs. And I've asked Jeff here, who's got experience in contracts, to kind of be our board person who's going to evaluate with Dominic's support, look at our overall leases, because we have the ability, for example, to go, what's our ability to raise the rents? I just simply don't know. But we want to, I think in the context of Foothills, the recommendation as I made to the infrastructure committee is before we make a decision on this, that's seems like we need to consider the big picture of the other hangars for doing that. So we want to work that and get that done in the next several months and take that, several months being, and we'll look at it in January or so. But your offer was, and Foothills has done a lot for us, and not only just hangar leases, but some of our IT stuff, and working on some improving our internet services, and maybe get some cameras up there and stuff. Alex has done, thank you for that. But we want a viable flight school here, and they want to keep the airport viable. So I think we can come up with a win-win. But I just felt it was the right thing to do, is consider the big picture and not just handle one thing, which could cause issues or may not cause issues for the other ones. So we want your money, yes. So we're not, no money, but I think we just need to do the right thing. So that'll be part of coming out with the infrastructure committee and as we get the big handle on this. It's something that actually started under Kevin, and because the county was going to do this big competitive study for the airports, and Kevin said, send us your result, send us what you come up with. But COVID came in and changed all that. So that's where we are on that. So more to come on that. On the fuel system, that's what I want to include in the public meetings. I don't talk about it tonight, but that's the status. I'll be there tomorrow at the 4 o'clock with Hunts, but.
And maybe I'll let some of the other folks know what we're up to,
Yeah.
so they, about 8 months ago, I contacted a company that I did part of the business for the state. We bought a $4.5 million fuel system from them. And they told us about a tank that we could possibly get for little or no money. The current design construction that above ground that the Port of Oakland has. And we didn't do it. So we looked at some other things, I guess, and we spent some money, and it came up with a $750,000 system for us, which we can't afford. We talked about it a little bit at the finance committee meeting last Thursday. Right after the meeting, I contacted the person I've been dealing with at Hunt Brothers and talked to them. They have given me, I asked them if I can get some more information for tonight's meeting. And they have provided me with that tank is still available. It's a 10,000 gallon Convo. That's above ground tank. Again, the Port of Oakland owns it. We are a government entity. And many times you can take, and just by asking, you can get this stuff for little or no cost. Because they're not using it, they have no reason to use it. And it just is from one government entity to another government entity. The cost will be minimal.
We need to, well, we'll get the information and get up the current board here up to speed on that. And
so tomorrow I've scheduled a meeting for anybody who wants to attend, I guess, in the airport office at 4 o'clock, that this fellow is going to give us more information on what's available. And he's got some ideas. He's done this for 40 years. He's very experienced, and he's given us some, or given me some ideas that I want to try and give to everyone else, where we can take and mitigate some of the costs of the fuel system down from 750,000 to something that we can manage around 150,000.
well, that 150,000 was just, there's no way. They put 40+% contingencies and everything. It was just inflated everywhere. Right. But yeah.
Well, that's what I'm working
Take it
on.
off the stand and do that.
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. One of the things we have to do is first decide if you're interested in this thing. And then one of us will have to go to the Port of Oakland and say, we are interested in this tank. And will you give it to us or sell it to us for nothing, or sell it to us for $1 or whatever? And then the tank has to be inspected. So the cost of inspecting the tank and testing it to make sure that it's a viable tank before we get any money really involved in it is $2,500. $2,500 or $2,155. And that's for this company to go down. They're representative.
Phil, what I'd like to do is not go into details here, because this is we might have another meetings.
Sure.
Yeah, but this is, this is excellent information. I want to collect and record tomorrow and talk to them. So it goes into the big picture of the trade studies. Yes, sure, appreciate it. Thank you.
This could turn into a really big deal.
Oh, it absolutely could. Yeah.
Well, if you're willing to pick it up, it's 90,000 pounds. Yeah, so you're gonna need 9 axles.
So, yeah, 8.5 light, I can plug heavy haul.
Yeah,
I do heavy haul.
If you can find someone to loan us the truck,
and a crane. Yeah.
I would buy
I
it.
can get the truck, I can get the heavy haul tractor, when we got it, right?
We gotta get a lowboy and a Jeep and a dump. For
That is,
$90,000.
if we can get this
You know
tank,
what?
that's easy.
I might be able to come up with all that.
If you come up with that, I will buy you dinner. And it won't be Taco Bell. But that's
on the drive up window that comes all.
You can buy anything you want as long as it's on the name.
No, I might be able to have that.
But yeah, I appreciate that.
Tank weighs 90,000. So
Empty. Yeah.
it's 8 by 28 feet. It's encapsulated in solid concrete with a steel inner liner.
Where would we put this in our airport ground?
Well, that's part of our trade studies that go through. Yeah.
Oh,
There's a lot, bunch of, and that's what we're, as you put this together, the location
So
becomes issues then.
one of the things I spoke with him about is the original location where the tank is now. We discussed that, and because of the setbacks, we may have to do a CMU wall because there's a standard setbacks.
Yeah.
And then there's the abbreviated setbacks you can take and mitigate some of that distance. And if we put up a CMU firewall, let's say between the wall property and the airport property, you can get very close.
Good.
You can get very close. And by being only 28 feet long, that's not much distance. Now, I think we do have to be 15 feet from the hangar wall. But that's pretty easily done. That's about where the AWAS is.
Yeah, what I want to do is get that information, and because there's different layout scenarios
Sure.
to put things in, so you can kind of, I got to see it in the picture to draw it out there. So I'm gonna get that information from you tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll get that. He'll give it to us. If we want a written copy of it, then they charge us for it. So that's why he's trying to help us give as much
Yeah.
verbal stuff as he possibly can. And
That's
one of us
what we
needs
need
to-
right now. Yeah.
Do you need anybody tomorrow to help in this meeting?
Well,
I think we got it.
yeah, I think we got, because Dominic's gonna be there, I'm gonna be there. I think Tanuj, you're gonna be there, so yeah, to meet them. Yep.
Memorial Fuel Farm.
Wait, the memorial part, I don't know.
Yeah.
I tried that once already here.
Yeah.
It didn't work like this. So anyway, so that's the information I have. We can save ourselves, if we can save ourselves a couple $100,000. That goes a
Oh.
long way.
Oh, it sure does.
And if we can take and mitigate some of the costs. Oh, one other thing with this guy is he has someone to take the old tank. And that's a $20,000 cost of just getting rid of it. So someone's willing to take it for free. And he has some contacts to do the concrete. So, and
Good.
one thing he was pretty confident in, because we have a newer fiberglass double wall tank, he's thinking that any ground contamination will be very minimal.
Well, we think we have none right now, because we have not had any, leaks.
That is millions and
Oh.
millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah, that's why it's a risk we want to get rid of underground, yeah. With that, was trying to keep this less than 2 hours or shorter, but a lot of good information. Thank you very much, Bill. I look forward to the meeting tomorrow, but for the board, hope this is prepare for decisions coming up next year. No board meeting, as in the tradition, no board meeting in December. So the next board meeting will be January 24th. So anybody have happy holidays here, and I think we've got a Christmas party coming up too here. And that's on 10th? 10th. And just put right here, right? Yeah. So it'll be lots of fun. So with that, I declare, any of the comments by the board? Nope, okay, meeting's over. Thank you, everyone. As of 8:43. The plastic ones just put up against the wall, those are Jeff's chairs, and I'll take them back.
So the wooden chairs go over there.
Then they can,